I'm Karissa Sherman, and I will be doing a presentation on Saxon Phonics in kindergarten. This is my final presentation upon graduation from the University of the Cumberlands. I'll start off with an introduction. The reason why I'm doing a presentation on Saxon Phonics in kindergarten is because we did a Brigance assessment on upcoming kindergartners and found that many of them were not ready for kindergarten because they lacked basic skills for reading. So I researched Saxon Phonics to see how well it was implemented into the classroom. Saxon Phonics is implemented in all 3 kindergarten classrooms here at Williamstown, and it is used as a program to introduce letters and letter sounds and how well students retain that information. So the purpose of the study is to investigate how well Saxon Phonics helps with students with the retention of letter sounds and letter recognition. I will start off with a literature review that there's 3 articles, and the first one is Early Literacy Instruction, and it focuses on information that pertains to relationships between sounds and spelling at the beginning stages of when students start reading, and it talks about decodable text, and Saxon Phonics is a program that uses decodable text in order to teach students how to read. And it's important for these phonics skills because as students age and go on to 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, they're going to need these skills to be successful. The second article is Scripted Linguistics Phonics Curriculum, and Saxon Phonics is a scripted program so teachers are able to read word for word the lessons that they are to teach to help these students learn. It helps students learn how to code words and to understand that writing is a code, and it targets skills pertaining to letter and sound recognition. The last article is Systematic Phonics Instruction, and basically phonics instruction needs to be implemented along with other skills because the alphabet is pretty much a code that students need to learn how to read, and it needs to be combined with other essential instructional programs to help students be successful. So my research question is, what effect does Saxon Phonics have on phonemic awareness in kindergarten? Once again, the justification for my research is that based on the 2015-2016 school year, Brigance showed us that 64% of our students were not ready for kindergarten because they lacked basic skills. And this large gap between preschool and kindergarten hinders the performance that kindergartners are supposed to be at. So we need to catch these students up before they move on to their next grade level. And I will use the Saxon Phonics assessments to assess them on how well they retain letter recognition and letter sounds. So the sampling of participants that I did, I used in my classroom. I had 21 students here at Williamstown. Students had a full day of school. I had 12 boys, 9 girls, all within the ages of 5 and 6 years old. 3 students came in with IEPs for our learning disability, and 2 students are in their 2nd year of kindergarten. And the percentage of students that are on free and reduced lunch is 66%. The materials that I'll be using, that I did use to collect my data, consist of a Saxon Phonics pretest that we gave to all students. We use review cards, the scripted lesson, the daily worksheets the students use, an oral assessment, and the answer form to collect data. So the explanation of materials, I'll review the card decks. The letter deck shows the students the letter for each lesson. We will review these daily on their worksheet and in a lesson. The sight work deck shows the students sight words for so many lessons. Sight words are only introduced on certain lessons. Then we have a picture deck. It shows the students the key picture. For example, the key picture here would be pig, and the key word that the teacher sees is on the back, and that word would be pig. The spelling deck is used by the teacher to help with the repetition for every single letter that we have learned in each lesson. So I'll start with the scripted lesson. There's different activities with the scripted lesson. We'll first start up with the warm-up activity. The warm-up activity is basically to be used to engage students and build prior knowledge, and this can be used in the form of doing jumping jacks while saying the ABCs, touching their toes, reciting the alphabet, whatever the activity says in the scripted lesson, that's what the teacher will do with their students. The phonological phonemic awareness focuses mainly on identifying letters, identifying the sound that correlates with the letter, talking about syllables and words, and how to manipulate sounds to make a new word. The daily letter and sound review will use the cards to go over each letter that we have learned so far, and we'll use the picture deck with the keyword picture on it to help reinforce those areas. And then the teacher will use the spelling sound card review. The students will listen to the teacher say the sound, the students will repeat the sound, and then write it on the corresponding line on their worksheet there at the top. For example, this letter is L. The teacher would say ul, students would repeat ul, and then they would write it on the number 1 on their worksheet. Same as with the next sound for number 2 would be ah. Teacher would say that sound. The students would repeat it and then write it on line number 2. This is the Saxon Phonics worksheet that the students will be using. I already explained the top section with the sound cards. The bottom section is called Application and Continual Review. Whatever the lesson says for the teacher to do in this lesson, it would say circle the uppercase and the lowercase f, because for this lesson it pertains to the letter F. And then we will go to the back of the worksheet. Students will learn how to code words. So in this example, students will have to use a brie to code short vowels. So in sit, fog, hat, and flag, they will sound out the words and draw a line to the corresponding picture. Then the teacher will give a brief spelling test on these words. The students will spell the words using their skills and then draw a line from the picture to the word that they spelled. This is the assessment that the students will use along with their worksheet. This teacher will have a scripted assessment, and this is what the students will use in order for the teacher to decide how well they are doing. Then we have classroom practice. We will go over certain words that are on our word wall. And then at the bottom of each child's worksheet are sight words that they will take home to work with their families, because sight words are a big part of reading. This is the scripted assessment. The teacher will read the scripted assessment and the student will answer on the previous worksheet that we just saw. And here the teacher would mark if the students correctly identified those letters or other skills. And then this is the weekly data chart that we also collect on each student. The bottom portion of this is optional for some teachers. It's just to reinforce specific concepts and used for your critical students who may need more individualized instruction. So here's my data analysis. I gave all my students a pretest, and here you can see the orange are my critical students. Students below level are in blue, my on-level students are in green, and my above-level students are in yellow. So looking at this chart here, you can see that 72% of my students were below level when they started kindergarten. Saxon Phonics requires at least 80% to be considered mastery on the skills in Saxon Phonics, and 80% is every child's goal for the year. So students that may not be on grade level, we have a lot of students that did not have previous schooling in preschool, or they came in from preschool with IEPs, and even if they were in preschool and did not have an IEP, they may not just have mastered the sounds and the letter recognition that they were supposed to in preschool. I also gave my students a mid-year assessment to see how they grew. Once again, 80% is considered mastery for Saxon phonics. So here you can see that the graph has kind of evened out a little bit. My critical students who scored a 19% or below has gone down immensely, as well as my below level students. And it actually went from 72% to 43%, which was amazing. The students who were not on level at this point or above are the students we had behavior concerns with, critical students that had academic or speech concerns, and students that needed the Tier 3 instruction because it's more rigorous and smaller grouping. So we took some actions in order to help these students succeed, and we referred one for special ed because he was not making any gains. We referred 2 students for speech, 5 critical students for Tier 3 instruction, so they were in smaller groups, and then 3 students were started on behavior plans with the school counselor. So after we implemented all those things, I gave them a post-test at the end of the school year, and here you can see that there was a lot of progress after we made all those gains, or after we made all those changes. So here you can see that 90% of my students scored mastery, which is right here in the yellow. So, and then we had only 5% that were considered critical, and that was my one student that was referred for special ed. Students who were not at mastery level was the student that was in special education, and he does have an IEP for being developmentally delayed, and another student is an English language learner, and we do not have an ESL teacher to help support his language barrier. Why students did meet the mastery level, we had the critical students in a rigorous RTI instruction. We used Orton Gillingham to support these areas, as well as the Saxon phonics. We also had the behavior plans with the school counselor, and that helped the students stay on track and control their behavior. And strategies from Saxon phonics helped the below and on level students progress to the mastery level. Okay, so another way that I compared data, I used map data that we do 3 times a year, and and I compared it to the Saxon phonics pretest. So in the fall, I have my critical students at 32%, below students at 40%, on level 23%, and above level at 5%. And if you compare those to the pretest, they are actually kind of similar, which is very good. So I used the map data to help break up my my ability groups into these 4 categories. So students in the 49th percentile or below were my students who were struggling with behavior. They had IEPs coming into kindergarten. They had little to no previous schooling. These were also my students who, most of them were low socioeconomic status, and they came from one-parent families. Students that scored within the 50th percentile and above, right here, are students that did have prior preschool or other areas of schooling, and most of them come from a 2-parent family, and many of them are considered middle class or above. This is the post-test and the spring map scores that I compared data to. So here you can see the post-test from Saxon, and students in the 49th percentile and below are my students who did struggle with reading and reading comprehension. So this is why they struggled on map. If you can see here that these numbers do not correlate with one another, because MAP does focus on more than just letter sounds and letter recognition. Students also struggled, if they were in the 49th percentile or below, they also struggled with syllables and other areas, other skill areas in writing. Students that scored in the 50th percentile and above are my students who were my strong readers, and they picked up writing skills very quickly, and they could comprehend well. So The data here, 20% and 43%, 63% of these students were on level or above. However, 90% of students scored mastery level on the post-test. The last way that I analyzed my data was based on absences. I had 2 students who had 20 or more days, absent days. I had 5 students with at least 11 to 20 absences, and then 14 with 10 or less days. My critical student, here, the one that was referred for special education, he is my lowest student. He missed multiple days because he had to go to Children's Hospital for occupational therapy, speech therapy, and he was out a lot for sickness. And then my second lowest student, he is my ELL student. He missed a month and a half of school. He withdrew 2 weeks before Christmas break and did not come back to school until 2 weeks after Christmas break, so he missed a lot of time there, and if he would have been in school those days, it would have helped him reach the mastery level. So the next part is next steps. I'm going to ask for some participation to help me figure out next steps for this program. So, based on the data, do you think we should continue with the Saxon Phonics program?
I would suggest going ahead and continuing next school year with Saxon Phonics, because if you take a look at your data shows and proves that it is working and it is successful in your kindergarten classroom with your kindergarten students.
Okay, so the data that was collected from Saxon Phonics supports another year of instruction. Okay?
I suggest that all 3 of the kindergarten teachers meet weekly to discuss student progress using Saxon Phonics to compare how it's working in each of the different classrooms.
Okay. All 3 kindergarten teachers meet weekly to discuss the progress of their students using Saxon Phonics. Okay?
Do you all stay in contact with your RTI teacher?
Yes, we are very involved with her.
Then, with that being said, I would suggest that you all meet with her weekly and discuss the data that you've collected each week, just to make sure that you are all on the same page and you're all staying informed on your students' weekly successes.
Okay. So meet with the RTI teacher to discuss critical students' progress. Okay? All right, thank you. All right, so we will use the data from Saxon Phonics. It does support another year of this instruction. All 3 kindergarten teachers will meet to discuss the progress of their students, and we will meet weekly with the RTI teacher to make sure those critical students are still progressing and not falling behind. Okay, so the second part of my presentation is the PLC focus question. And the question is, what strengths and challenges does the trust survey reveal about the kindergarten PLC group and other staff members at Williamstown Elementary? So what I did, I gave a trust survey to my participants, which was Ms. Julie Kinsey. I had Ms. Heather Kreitlinger and myself. Both Julie and Heather do have master's degree in elementary education, 22 years experience for Ms. Kinsey, 18 for Ms. Heather. I have my bachelor's degree in elementary education, and I have 3 years experience. So the methodology, I use this survey here called the Trust Survey, and what the teachers will do, there are 16 questions, and they will rate on how they feel about the statement based on a disagree, neutral, or an agree. And then they will rate that same statement on a 1, 2, 3 level, 1 being very important to them, 3 being not very important to them. And all this data was used to collect data on how well we feel amongst ourselves as well as other staff members in our school. Okay, the way that I distributed this survey was to put each survey in my teacher's mailbox. The teachers used the scale to assess their PLC group and other members of the school, and then they returned it back to me in my mailbox with no name, so it was totally anonymous. Once I received those trust surveys back, I took all the statements and sorted those into 3 categories, which are teamwork, character, and encouragement. So here is my data analysis with my teamwork questions regarding sharing materials and classroom atmosphere, how well teachers make their classrooms feel welcoming. Overall, this group feels that they can ask their group members for materials and other colleagues to help them, get through a lesson or other materials that they can share. And it's important to build these relationships because we need a welcoming environment, and so, teachers feel comfortable with one another. So the level of importance here is that 67% of the teachers felt like this was very important to them. They need that open communication with their teachers. They need to be able to feel welcome into their classroom or into another teacher's classroom, and this helps, the relationships between teachers, whereas 33% felt like this was somewhat important to them. The second category was based on character, and this category talks about counting on your colleagues, learning from your colleagues, and the relationship with them, being able to share ideas with them without feeling like you're being judged. So overall, 67% feel like we do a very good job of this at Williamstown. It's hard to maintain these healthy relationships because Williamstown does have a barrier where primary and intermediate are separate, so we don't get a lot of communication with them. That is why I believe the 33% disagree with that. Our colleagues, we aren't able to be open with them. I consider this as a weakness in our school because we do have the 33% that disagree. And the area of character is very important to all participants because it's important to build relationships no matter what grade level you teach in, and we also need to be able to share ideas with our colleagues. And it would be interesting to see how the data would change if I gave this to every teacher in the school and then analyzed the data. The last category of encouragement, it focuses on areas of personal and professional success as well as team level and collective accomplishments. 67% say we kind of do this, they feel neutral on it, we might need more. 33% believe that we do this. I did have a note on one of my trust surveys saying that participant feels that staff morale within the school is very low. So I also considered this as an weakness for the school. So the level of importance here is very high. We need to have a high staff morale to build those meaningful relationships between yourself and colleagues. So the possible next steps for our PLC in the area of weakness of character, I said that listening to one another without judging and listening, just providing support would be very helpful, and being open to change. We have a lot of teachers that don't like change, and we need to be open to that. And the second area, weakness of encouragement, we could have luncheons together. We can do team building exercises, get together outside of school, and most importantly, don't leave anybody out. So that concludes my presentation for today. I appreciate all the participation for this presentation.